And the reason we focus stack, number one reason, we want our images sharp front to back. As you can see, we're focused here on our immediate foreground, and the further we get into the scene, the more out of focus it goes. And that's probably the easiest way to start with focus stacking. Get your exposure, so one exposure, and all you're doing is focusing through the frame to get everything in focus. Okay, so now that we've got our focus stacks, now I'm just going to take some photos. Hello again. Today we're going to do some focus stacking. So what we've got down here is some really nice mangrove roots leading out towards this tree, and then our sky looks like it's going to be pretty good. So what I'm going to do is focus on our foreground, focus on our midground, and then focus on our sky, and then blend them all together in Photoshop. So I'll run through the whole process of how I set up the camera, how I focus, and then stick with it, and at the end we'll do the editing session. Okay, so I'm shooting away from the sun. The sun is setting out to the left, and what I'm doing is I want the sun out of my shot so it lights up the tree, and that way we get some of this nice golden light on our foreground. So when we focus stack, like, we're making this part of our shot. So unlike the other video that I did where we just wanted that blurring leading lines, this one we're actually making the foreground part of the shot. Okay, so use the light to light up our scene. That way we don't need to focus stack and exposure blend at the same time. We can do it all in one exposure. And that's probably the easiest way to start with focus stacking. Get your exposure, so one exposure, then all you're doing is focusing through the frame to get everything in focus. Okay, we're really close to our foreground. Our tree's a long way away, and then the sky's a long way away. So again, if we have a look at the back of the camera. Okay, so just in manual focus, I'm zooming in on my immediate foreground, and as you can see, that's quite blurry. So zoom right in, manually focus on our foreground. Okay, so now that's nice and sharp. Then I'm going to zoom out again and get my exposure set. So I'm not changing my aperture. Aperture's set at f8, ISO's at 100. Okay, so now all I'm doing is watching my histogram and keeping my highlights under control. And because we've got the light lighting up our scene, everything will be fine. Okay, so somewhere around about there. So we'll get our first shot for our foreground. So there's our foreground. And then we'll zoom in and just sort of work our way through the scene, continuously focusing as we go and firing off shots. And because we're on a tripod, everything's going to line up nice and easy in Photoshop. Okay, so for this to work, it definitely works better on a tripod. Okay, so when we go to line up our images, everything will line up a lot easier if it's only looking for focus and it's not trying to align our images. Okay, and then again, we'll just focus out on the tree this time. And as you can see, as we focus further and further, we're getting closer to infinity, so everything's nice and sharp. Okay, so now that we've got our focus stacks, now I'm just going to take some photos. Okay, time for the editing side of things. So let's have a quick look at the images first before I sort of get into it. And the reason we focus stack, okay? Number one reason, we want our images sharp front to back. Okay, shooting at a bigger aperture, so f16, f22, you start to introduce diffraction. And if you're shooting something really close to your lens, as I was in this case, your depth of field isn't going to be great enough to get everything in one shot. Okay, this image here is probably our hyperfocal distance, so sort of focused in the middle of the scene. and it gives us an acceptably sharp image throughout. Okay, so they're not pin sharp in the foreground, not pin sharp in the background, but it's acceptably sharp. And if we wind our aperture out to, you know, f10 to f14, it will be a little bit better. Okay, but as you saw from the video, I was very close to this foreground, so our depth of field is a lot greater, as you can see, we're focused here on our immediate foreground, and the further we get into the scene, the more out of focus it goes. Okay, and the other way around, here we're focused on the tree, or we're focused on infinity, and then in our foreground, we're out of focus. Okay, so if you want pin sharp from front to back, focus stacking is a very good option. Now, another thing to note, and this happens more so with larger zooms. So in this case, I was using the 24 to 105. So with a larger zoom and the more budget friendly zooms, you're going to get a thing called focus breathing. Okay, so if we have a look at our first image and then our last image, now keep in mind these were shot on a tripod and I haven't moved, but it appears there's movement. So that's what's called focus breathing. Okay, so as the lens focuses on our foreground, it blows out our background a little bit focus-wise. And then as we focus on our background, okay, so that's called focus breathing, where we have this shift. We have our shift in the lens. That plays a very important part soon, and we'll get to that once we start editing the images. Okay, so I'm going to break this up into two parts. Part one will be Lightroom, and part two will be Photoshop. Now, keep in mind that you cannot do focus stacking in Lightroom yet. They may introduce it in the future, but at this stage, if you want to do a focus stack, it must be done in Photoshop. But the way we do it is slightly different. If we bring in images from Lightroom to Photoshop, is a different process to if we just start in Photoshop from the get-go. Okay, so I'll break this up into two parts because they are slightly different. So part one is going to be Lightroom, and this is how we do it in Lightroom. So I've done a basic edit to my images. The key thing here is we want them all to look similar. So what I've done is I've edited my first image, I've held my shift key, selected the last image, and then I've synchronized all of those edits across all of the images. Okay, so that's number one. We want every image to be as close to each other as possible, and that's why we shoot in manual mode. Okay, so our aperture's not changing, our shutter speed's not changing, ISO, everything's the same. You're just going to have that focus breathing to deal with. So once we've got our images ready, what we're going to do is select all of them. So you can either click the first one, hold shift and click the last one, or Control and A on the keyboard will select all. Then we're going to right click, edit in, and we're going to open as layers in Photoshop. So we're going to do that. Okay, so now that we've got them opened in Photoshop, and as you can see off to the right hand side, we've got all our 4 layers. Okay, so that's each of the photos have now come into Photoshop. So what we're going to do is select the top one, the top layer, hold the shift key and select the bottom layer, and now they're all highlighted. Once they're all highlighted, we're going to come over to the top left hand side. We're going to go up to edit, and the first thing we're going to do is align our layers. Now, if you don't align your layers and you go straight to auto blend, you're going to see some weird things happen. Okay, so I highly recommend go to auto align layers first, and that will sort out our focus breathing. Okay, so if you're using a prime lens that doesn't have a lot of focus breathing, you can probably go straight to auto blend. But if you notice that there is a little bit of a shift in your images, okay, so if your first image and your last image are looking like this, where there's a fair bit of movement, okay, what you want to do is you want to auto align your images first. Okay, so that's very important. Auto align. And I just put it on auto. I don't remove any of this. I've already done a basic edit. So just simply select auto and press OK. Okay, so now it's aligned our images. And again, if we just sort of hide those middle two and look at our top one, and now they're much better aligned. Okay, so now that we've aligned our images with them all still selected, we're going to go back to edit, and we're going to do auto blend layers. Okay, and we're going to select stack images. So by default, it's probably on panorama. So we're going to select stack images. We're going to leave seamless tones and colors on. I don't use the content aware, and then just press OK. And that's it. We now have our focus stack done. So very important, yeah, auto align your images first. It will make the blend a lot nicer. Okay, and as you can see now, throughout that entire frame, we are pin sharp front to back. Okay, because we've done an auto align, we will need to crop in the edges a little bit. Okay, so just with our crop tool, if we just bring in those edges just a little bit, just to tidy it up. So keep that in mind, that if you notice a lot of focus breathing in your lens, just give yourself a little bit of extra room to allow for a little bit of a crop. Okay, and then we'll crop that. And that's it, that's our focus stacked image. And as you can see now, it is, and I haven't even sharpened this image yet. This is just basically straight out of camera with no sharpening, but we've shot at our best aperture we possibly can, and we are pin sharp from front to back. Okay, so finally we just go up to layer, flatten image, and then if we just hit file, save, that will now save it back into Lightroom. So if we go back into Lightroom, there's our stacked image. Okay, so then we can continue editing and do whatever we like to it from there. Okay, so that's the Lightroom process. Now I'll cover the Photoshop process, which is a little bit different, very similar, but yeah, just slightly different. Okay, so now the Photoshop process. So the first thing we want to do is go and find our images. So if we go up to File, Open, and we're just going to select our raw files. Okay, so I've got my raw files here. I doubled up with a couple, that's why there's extra ones in there. So they're my 4 different focal points. And I've just done a quick edit to them. I've just done a very basic edit to start with. Most importantly, if we press Control and A on the keyboard, that will select all of our images. So then whatever we do to one image will affect all of them. Okay, so I've done a very basic edit on one of the images. Because I've selected all of them, you'll see as I make changes, it affects all of those images. Okay, so I've got them roughly where I want them, okay? So edit-wise, look, it's not the most exciting image in the world, but it's a good demonstration of focus stacking, how we can get our entire shot nice and clean. Okay, so from here, with them all still selected, we're just going to hit Open, and that should open them all in Photoshop. Okay, so now that we have our 4 images open in Photoshop, and we'll just see them along the top here. So the first thing we want to do is come up to File, and what we're going to do is go down to Scripts, and then Load Files into Stack. Okay, so Load Files into Stack, add all open files, and we want to tick Attempt to automatically align images. This is where the focus breathing comes in. If you've got a lot of focus breathing, I highly recommend attempt to automatically align images. It will make the stitching process a lot better. Okay, and then just press OK. Okay, so now we have our stack. Okay, so we have all of our images stacked on top of each other. So if I just hide these two, so there's our first one with our foreground in focus. Okay, and then the top one, or the bottom one, will be the one with our background in focus. Because we've done the auto align images, they're all very similar, okay, and that's going to make the blending process a lot better. Okay, so what we're going to do is select our top layer, hold the Shift key and select our bottom layer. From here, we're going to go up to the top left-hand corner to Edit, and we're going to go to Auto Blend Layers. By default, it's probably on Panorama, so we'll just click on Stack Images, leave Seamless Tones and Colors ticked, and press OK. Okay, and as you can see, it has created all our layer masks, and if we zoom in on that image, we should be absolutely pin sharp from front to back. Okay, and look at that. It's a perfect blend front to back. Okay, so just keep in mind that yes, if you do have focus breathing, that's very important that you align your images first. That's focus stack. So from there, we can just go up to Layer, Flatten Image, and then we can save that, we can do whatever we want. Okay, so the only other thing to note is that because we did an auto align, there will be a little bit of left over around the edge. So if we just crop it in a little bit, just crop in your edges a little bit. So just keep that in mind, that when you do an auto align, it will shift your images, so you will need to crop the edges a little bit. Okay, and that's our focus stacked image. Okay, hopefully you found that useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, give it a thumbs up so then I get an idea of what people want to see. If you're not subscribed, feel free to subscribe. If you want to see live streams, click the notification bell, and that way you'll get notified when I'm planning a live stream. I'll usually plan them at least an hour beforehand, sometimes 2 or 3 hours, sometimes a day before. Okay, so if you click the notification bell, turn on notifications, you should get a message to say that I'm going live in an hour, I'm going live in 2 hours, etc. Okay, so thank you all again, and hopefully I'll see you live next time. Planning a pretty exciting live stream this weekend actually. I've found a new location and you have to see it. So get notifications, subscribe, keep an eye on everything. Really, really nice location coming up. So thank you again for watching, and I will hopefully see you very soon.